Good morning, everybody. As I'm sure you've surmised by the title of this video, today is brew day. It's been a while since I've brewed anything. I'm super excited about this. This is a recipe I designed in BeerSmith. The Big Island of Hawaii inspired me to make this Big Island IPA. It's a mango IPA hopped with Galaxy hops. Okay, these hops have an extremely high alpha, so I'm gonna use the Galaxy for bittering and for aroma. Okay, here on Brew Day, I've got the Kama Citra IPA. I'm not gonna say much about it because I haven't done having a beer with it yet. So we'll talk about it then, but I'm gonna enjoy one while we brew today. Okay, if you wanna see the recipe, we're gonna jam on over to BeerSmith real quick, and I'll talk a little bit more about the details of this recipe. And we're almost up to temp on our strike water, so as soon as we go through the recipe, I'll come back and we'll dough in. See you soon. Cheers. Okay. So the grain bill I'm using on today's Big Island IPA, I'm using 12.5 pounds of good old US 2-row. I'm using a pound of caramel crystal malt 60. And then I'm going to go ahead and use half a pound of light DME in the boil because I have found that 13.5 pounds is about capacity for the Robo Brew. If I try to use any more than that, the mash comes up over the malt pipe and it makes me a little bit nervous. So, and also for the grist ratio, I can't really put much more water in it than what I'm already using. So that's why I'm just going to add the half a pound light DME to the boil. Raise the alcohol percentage a little bit without having to add any more grain. Okay, and then for the 60-minute boil, I'm going to add 3/4 of an ounce of Galaxy. And this Galaxy Alpha is really high. You'll notice it's 16.3%. Okay, whirl flock, of course, in at 15 minutes. And then I'm going to dump in 2 ounces of Galaxy at the 5-minute mark. Okay, of course, I'm going to dry hop with 2 more ounces of Galaxy in the secondary. And for this one, it's the first time I've ever brewed with fruit. I'm going to add 3 pounds of mango puree in the secondary along with the dry hop. And then of course today I'm going to pitch with a package of California, so it's White Labs 001 California Ale yeast. I made a starter last night, so I'll be pitching the starter today. And you can see down here the range where everything falls. Looks good. I'm excited about this one. Cheers, everybody. I hope you've all got a home brew with you today, drinking along with me. If you don't have a home brew, a store-bought brew will work just fine, okay, for our purposes here today. Okay, so we've got our strike water up to 156 degrees. Here in my hand, I have the 12.5 pounds of 2-row and the pound of caramel crystal malt 60 that the brew shop here in OKC, Gail, shout out, generously milled up for me yesterday. So we're gonna do Gail proud and dough in her handiwork. 156 degree strike water. She's holding. Try not to lose any of this grain because this is where our original gravity comes from. If we don't get all the sugars out of these grains, the recipe won't live up to the numbers. And that's really fine for me and my purposes, but I'd like to get everything out of them that I can. So, and we're gonna go ahead and stir them in so we don't get those dough balls, because again, if you haven't seen my other videos or any other videos, if you have a dough ball, the grains inside this ball aren't touching the water, so the water can't extract the sugars out of those grains. So I'm trying not to let these things get stuck together. And slowly but surely we'll make it to the end of the sack. The old feed sack here. Feeding my horses this morning. Smells like breakfast cereal. Imagine that, right? This is slow work, but I believe that in going slow, we get a more harmonious outcome. Okay. We're still at 154, so kudos to the Robo Brew, hanging tough. Okay, so I have a 1,000 watt and a 500 watt burner on this thing. I'm probably gonna cut the 500 as soon as I get the lid on it to let the temp get down to 152. And then throughout the hour I'm mashing, I'm gonna turn it off and on as needed to keep that temp at 152, okay? So, that's it. We'll put our lid on and we'll mash for 1 hour. See you in an hour. Cheers. I've got my hot liquor tank over here. So what I'm doing, I need to get this water back here up to 170. So when I pull the grains up and it's time to sparge or rinse these grains, this water will be at 170 degrees. Okay? I used to have to do this on the stove in the kitchen on the induction burner, and that took forever. So now that I have the burner back here, it'll be a lot quicker and I'll be ready to go by the time this hour's up. Okay. So the mash is over, the hour's up. Our pump here has been running the entire time, bringing the wort from the bottom back up through and recirculating to really get all those sugars. Okay, so we'll cut the pump at this point. Now, our hot liquor tank back here, the water in there should be at 170 degrees right now. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the heat, and then we'll go ahead and sparge. Alright, so the wort is draining through the grains right now. This water's at 170 degrees, and I'm just gonna pour it through there to rinse these grains out. This is 3 gallons of water, but when poured in there, it should bring me up to 7 gallons, which is what I'm looking for, because I'll probably get about a gallon of boil off through the boil, and that'll take me down to the 6 that I'm after. Okay? So let's rinse. And I have a little screen on top of these grains that keeps the water from impacting on those grains directly. It hits the screen and then it slowly rinses down through it. As long as this is draining down through there, I know I don't have a stuck mash. That's why I didn't want to pull this up super fast, because if those grains compress down in there, the water wouldn't be able to drain through, and that's what we'd call a stuck mash. So the fact that it's draining tells me that everything is good. Okay, and sometimes this is a pain because I can't see where the level is, but since I'm outside and it's nice and light, I can kind of see through the edge of where that 7-gallon mark's at. So if it's not finished draining, I'll just remove it once it gets up to 7 gallons. And this is also a great time to talk about something else. I was concerned earlier when the sun was out that the direct sunlight was affecting my brew, because I've heard that sunlight, can cause a beer to skunk. But on homebrewersassociation.org message board, someone said the skunking compounds aren't present until fermentation. Another guy said beer needs to be fermented and contain riboflavin in order for skunking to take effect. So, since fermentation hasn't started yet, I haven't pitched any yeast, I guess I don't have to be concerned. So, that's good news. Okay, so I've hit 7 gallons exactly, so that's great. Okay, now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna bring this up to a boil, and then once that's boiling, I'll come back, I'll add the 1/2 pound of DME, and then our first hop addition, which is the 0.75 ounces of Galaxy, right when the boil starts. Okay, I'm gonna crank the heat up on this baby, and we'll be back once we reach a boil. See you in a bit. I think I'm gonna go grab a beer. How about you? Okay, so we've reached a boil. Now what we need to do, I'm gonna add our Galaxy hops, and that'll start our 60 minutes. Got a little bit of a mess down here. Okay, so 0.75 ounces of Galaxy hops going in. 60 minutes has begun. Now, we're gonna add 1/2 pound of DME. The temp is a lot cooler today than it was supposed to be. So I don't know if you can see these winter coats down here, but I've had the winter coats around the Robo Brew, so it would come up to a boil faster. It's really been slowing me down. This did not come up to a boil as fast as I would have liked, so it'll probably take a little bit of time to bring it back to a boil. Some left, but close enough. As long as the OG comes out close to what it's supposed to be, I'll be happy. I'm not gonna button these again because that was way too hard to take off, and the hot break was coming up, so I'm gonna leave it a little more accessible but still block this wind, okay? Sometimes you gotta do some crazy stuff, but you know what? We got beer to help us through it. Cheers, everybody. I'll show you the World Flock. Pretty exciting. Dropping a little tablet in. And then my, 5-minute hops, 2 ounces of Galaxy. And then we'll chill this thing down and pitch our starter from yesterday. Cheers. All right, folks, great success. That is the end of the brew day. I pitched the WLP 001, and now I have the beer back in the fermentation chamber. It's gonna be at 68 degrees. It's still at 67, it's not quite up to 68. But since I did a yeast starter, I did a blow-off tube, and it's cool because this thermo well, typically where the airlock would be, I just put the blow-off tube, and it's going into a bottle of sanitizer, sterilizer. So there'll be bubbles in there. Here in a day, of course that's the probe that tells us what temperature the beer's at. Here in about a day, I'm gonna remove the blow-off tube, I'm gonna pop an airlock in it, and it's gonna ferment for about 3 weeks. Oh, and then I was gonna show you since I probably will post this video before I do the secondary fermentation, I'm gonna dry hop it for 14 days in a 5-gallon carboy. And I'm gonna use this mango puree from Vintner's Harvest. There's 3 pounds, 1 ounce. I'm gonna dump it in. I've read that 3 pounds is pretty good for a 5-gallon batch to keep it subtle, okay? So when I put the dry hops in, I'm gonna pour all of that puree in. And then we'll be back. You know, I've got some plans in the meantime before this is done. Got a couple beer tastings to do, okay? I don't have my beer, I just finished it, so I'm gonna have to air cheers ya. Cheers, guys. I'll see you all real soon.